be completely honest with you guys, I have been feeling a bit lonely recently, which is, I think, unusual for me to say. I don't usually feel very lonely. I feel I keep myself reasonably busy. I have like a decent amount of friends, but there have been different things that are making me feel a bit lonely. When I feel lonely, I tend to feel a bit sad as well. Like it's a whole bundle of emotion for me. It's like lonely and then kind of feel a bit, what am I even doing? And then that equals a combination of just being sad. So today I want to talk about being alone and feeling lonely. And in a tangent to that, I want to speak about making friends as an adult, and navigating that whole space. I have spoken about independence in relationships before, and really understanding about how you prioritize me in a relationship. And honestly, it's not easy. And I think, it's great that I had a podcast about it. And it's great that I think generally 90% of the time I feel like pretty good about what I shared there. And I feel like I can live into that. But there are definitely 10% of the time, I do feel that I sometimes struggle with it. And I find it hard to maintain it. And I'm telling you this because I want to be real with you guys. It is great that I have views and visions and that I live by, but there are times when I just feel I'm not living up to them, or I'm not able to maintain a normal state of my life, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good opportunity to step back and think about my current state and how I'm behaving and whether that's really serving me, which is important to do, I think, regularly. I think I've mentioned that a few times, but I do think it is good. I think when I do get the feeling, my first thought is not like, what could I do to improve? Like, take a step back. I think you definitely feel that sense of doom and gloom. And I think that's also okay. Sometimes, I wouldn't say I like it, but sometimes I'm okay with feeling to letting myself just sink into that emotion of feeling a bit sad or just feeling my emotions, because I often find that it helps me gain clarity on the other side and give me more intention when I am thinking about like what my next steps are to kind of reset. So yeah, I think at the moment I have been struggling with being independent and this sense of feeling lonely within my relationship, but also just generally. I don't feel like so much of it is relationship, but I'll share my thoughts on that and you'll understand kind of like why I say that. So for those of you who haven't listened to my podcast before, I suggest you start from the start, but if you've just ad hoc listened to this episode, I have lived across quite a few countries and I recently moved. And so this is like my fourth or third time moving to another new country. And with that comes a lot of excitement, but also comes a lot of exhaustion. There's a lot of things that I think about when you move to a new country that you're just like, oh my God, you have to do X, Y, Z again. Like setting up a new home, finding furniture, finding a place, making it your own, getting a routine, finding like your supermarket, finding restaurants you like, finding produce you like. That is all just like foundational things that you're just setting up. And I think it really takes like 6 to 12 months to really feel like you have hit your stride, you're feeling like comfortable in the place that you are. And so whenever people want to move overseas, I'm always like 2 years at least. You need that to like really feel like you can find your space and then like build your community and have a life. And so I think at the moment I'm in the like 6-month-ish phase. And yeah, I think this is I wouldn't say it's the hardest, but it's definitely been more challenging in a different way. I think because this time my plate is really busy. Like my I'm like really deep in the weeds with it. I'm really busy. I have a lot of stuff going on with social media. I have my podcast. I have a lot of commitments I've made to myself. I have like working out. I have like my fitness goals. And then I have like just being a social person in terms of like being there as a partner, being there for my friends, my family, people visiting. Like there's so many things happening that I feel like I have so much less time now for myself. And by having less time to do things, I think I definitely drop the ball a bit sometimes with prioritizing what's best for myself. So because I feel like more limited with time now, I really do need to really think hard about what I spend my time doing. Which means that, you know, when I do travel quite a bit or I have visitors coming, it does make it hard for me to form a routine. And I think I've struggled this year with prioritizing forming a routine and like giving myself the space to do that. Because actually, as I've mentioned before in previous videos and podcasts, I am actually quite a routine-based person, and I think I thrive better when I have, you know, my Monday to Friday, this is my workout routine, this is what I'm eating for breakfast, this is like my work schedule. It just makes it more enjoyable for myself, I guess. And don't get me wrong, I love traveling, I love all that, but I think when you're trying to like set goals and achieve things, it is really hard to have such a nomadic life or like environment where you have so many people coming in and out. And so I also think that when I am left, because I'm so busy now, that when I am left to my own devices and I do have a moment to myself, or a bit too, I wouldn't say just a moment, I would say like a bit too much time to myself, meaning for me that's probably 1 whole day or 2 whole days by myself at home, then I can get really in my head. I really give into the intrusive thoughts, and it's, for me, I know the thing that helps me come alive a bit is being able to interact with other people, and just have that social interaction makes me feel alive again. However, I have noticed that, you know, when you say I feel down or in a moment where I'm feeling in a slump, I might go and fill all my time up with all these things that I know can easily make me feel good, but not really think about the root cause and focus on the long-term things that are going to make me feel better about whatever is bothering me. And so I think that's something that I'm really self-aware and conscious of, and therefore this time that I was feeling that, I was really letting myself sit in it and trying to take my time to understand why I felt how I felt. And speaking to my sister, who is like my confidant in life, my guardian angel, she was able to really like offer me really great advice to just, you know, step back and understand, I guess like appreciate the situation that I was in, but also just try to think about taking like a different perspective and think more about like why I was feeling a certain way I was. So, and I think also at the moment I'm just going through such a transition phase where there is so much opportunity for me, but I feel my character and my personality is getting a bit impatient with like when is it going to happen? When will I get the opportunity? What am I doing wrong? And asking a lot more like questions of why in a negative context as opposed to how in a positive context, like more productive context. So yes, that is currently what's been happening with me, and I hope it gives a good overview of like the mindset that I was in. But this mindset, I wouldn't say that I was in, I think it's not really past tense yet. I think there's parts of it that still exist, and that's what I'm saying in the sense of I don't want to just like fix it overnight with some simple thing like just having drinks with friends. I've been thinking more about this whole... So yeah, I've been brewing a lot on, you know, how I've been feeling and thinking about like constructive ways that I can move forward. And so for me, I really want to make this podcast all about like how I reground myself, refresh my mind, and reset my energy. So I think the first thing I want to talk about is making new friends. And this is why I said a tangent of like making new friends when you're an adult. Because honestly, making new friends when you're an adult is it's difficult. And I wouldn't say it's difficult because like the actual action of it is hard, as in like the access to friends is hard. I actually don't think that's the problem, because I think there's actually, as you get older, I think your circles get smaller in the sense of, you know, when you were in primary school, when you went from primary school to high school, maybe you had like one connection of like, oh, you're friends with that person, or you live down the road from me. And then once you go from high school to university, it's like, oh, you know XYZ from like what school? Like we all know each other. And then that's where your circle gets smaller. And then when you get to work, it's like, oh my God, you're somebody's sister. And by the time you're like in your mid 20s or late 20s, you've met that's where you've met pretty much all of your friends. What I'm trying to say is, by the time you get to work, you've only got like 1 degree separation between most people that you have met or know of, especially if you grew up in that space. But I do think at the current space that I'm in, like everybody knows everyone. It's like a super insular, it's quite small. And so I don't think it's hard to have access to like people to meet, but I think the action of going out there and like actually making the friend is really tiring, because you know, you have a different sense of energy. Like I was saying, you have different priorities, you have less time. So I am not going to just spend my time with anyone, and I just physically do not have the time to like nurture a friendship like I would have when I was maybe 20. So for me, I really focus on meeting people who I really connect with, and it's effortless. If it's like a lot of effort, you know, someone really requires me to be a certain person that I'm not, I am not here for it. I do not have time for it. I cannot be bothered. And so I think when I think about making friends as an adult initially, when I'm like, okay, I really need to get out there and make some more friends, especially when I'm like moving to a new place, it exhausts me a little bit, because I'm like, oh, I have to go through this whole like getting to know you phase. But I honestly have to say, like, if the person is a right fit for you, it's not like that. Because it'll just be joyful to like hang out with that person and easy. But the caveat to that is that you have to go through meeting quite a few people before you get to that place or find those people that are your people. So I would say that action and that like discovery phase is probably the most exhausting thing to think about when I think about making friends. The other thing is, even though I said like there is a great access to friends, like it still requires you to go out there and put yourself into different situations, change your routine, change like maybe what you like to do, and be a bit more adaptable to put yourself in those positions to make those new friends. And that itself also takes time, and it takes a lot of like flexibility. And then I think for me, what I've been struggling with is like when you are in a relationship and we actually don't spend Monday to Friday together, we're like super busy with work. We see each other for like 2 hours at nighttime and then we go to sleep. It makes you want to prioritize your partner first. And I think I have a bad habit of that where I'm, you know, I would rather spend most of my time with my partner and like prioritize that with them because I enjoy their time the most. But I have noticed recently how that can be, a negative thing for me, because it just becomes a very easy excuse to not put time and effort into other things that I should be doing or people that I should be meeting, because I'm fearful of like not having enough time with my partner, which I mean, I think it all comes from a loving space, but I do think at some point it does become an excuse. And then when you tell yourself that narrative, then you don't really, I kind of kill and curb my own curiosity and block out opportunities that I could have, but I don't know that I have because I'm being closed-minded and like kind of codependent. And I think the second thing to that is it creates like a pressure or an expectation. Yeah, a pressure between your relationship, because there is an expectation where one of you are more willing to just say like, oh no, I'm going to go hang out with like XYZ and you can do your own thing. And the other person is more like, oh, but I'm prioritizing you and I want to do XYZ with you. It just creates a weird dynamic. And so I think you have to have an agreement within your relationship. Like, you know, I'm really supportive of you going and hanging out with your friends, making friends. And you both need to be supportive of like the place that each other are in. You might not be in the same time, but you do need to be, I think, cognizant of trying to put each other in the best position to do that. So like for me right now, I'm trying to like make more friends. And so when I do like say, oh, I think I'm going to go to this event to try and meet some more people, I think an encouraging thing my partner could do is say like, yeah, you should go for it. Like be encouraging and support that versus saying like, oh no, but like I wanted to hang out with you and da-da-da-da-da, knowing that like, you know, we hang out 6 nights of the week. So I think it's being able to be that pillar and that voice of support where needed and knowing when to push and pull with your partner. And if you don't know how to do that, I think it becomes like this whole issue that I've been having at the moment could really spiral and become very imbalanced between you and your partner. I also think, yeah, like with what I was saying, I just think like having a partner sometimes can be a deterrence to making new friends because you can too easily just rely on hanging out with that person and it just becomes like an excuse. And then by the end of it, you realize you haven't made any friends. So it leads me to my next point as well around having a partner. And I think the second part of like my like understanding myself and where I'm at and why I was feeling the way I was feeling was because I think recently I've gotten into like, a habit of leaning too much on my partner socially, which, you know, like I don't particularly, I mean, I'm pretty indifferent about hanging out with his friends. I think they're really nice people, but they're not really like, not all of them are my friends, and not every event that I go to is like a conversation that I'm interested in because they have different interests. And so I've been finding myself going to those situations, but actually it's like, why are you going when you know you're not going to particularly like enjoy or gain anything from that experience? And so I find myself, I think, in moving to a new country recently, being a bit too complacent on my social environment and relying too much on my partner and his social circle, which has just made me have excuses for my own laziness. And like, honestly, it's just made me realize that I really need to go make my own friends, even though I need to, but just, I need that kick. I've just really needed that kick out the butt to just go and do it because it's really not that hard. The other item I wanted to try and talk about was being self-motivated. So someone asked me the other day, it was so funny, they were asking me about why I have so much vitality and life. I was like, oh, I mean, yeah, I'm a pretty like expressionate and outgoing person, but I was thinking, I've never really thought deeply about like why I'm like that. And so I was like, interesting question. And it did get me thinking. And so I was trying to think about the best way to explain it to this person. Because I was thinking, maybe it's because I just work out regularly and I have a lot of energy. But then it's not necessarily like the only thing. So I do think it's like a few things that contribute to it. But I do think the biggest driver is that I am very self-disciplined. So like even if I don't want to do something, I have this like little voice inside of my head that is very powerful and will usually, in most cases, make me do that thing because I know that it's better for me, or I will like benefit from it in some way, even if it's positive or negative. And so I think I've learned this a lot through like trial and error, and I've definitely spoken about this before, but from trial and error of like putting myself in different environments, you know, pushing myself to go to different things when I don't want to go, and seeing the outcome, I think for me it's like a net positive. And so I'm quite encouraged to listen to that little voice inside my head and just go. So yeah, I think that's why I have so much vitality. But the reason I talk about being self-motivated is I think when you do move to a new country, a new environment, you really have to make sure that you are being self-motivated to build that life and to build that life and really go and get what you want. I do think that like when I say, you know, even when I'm saying resetting, regrouping, like regrounding yourself, all of that requires a level of self motivation, because it's so easy to sit there and just be like, yeah, I should be doing XYZ, versus like, yep, I should be doing XYZ and I'm going to go do it. And a lot of people, I think, lack that discipline to go and do that. And that's why we can sit in lulls of certain emotions and feelings and phases of life too long, much longer than we need to. I also think that choosing like your environments, your surroundings, the people you interact with, your activities is really important. And I say this because I think that for me, what I've noticed recently is I think I'm really affected by my surroundings, like the place that I live in and the environment that I'm living in, and how that correlates to my ability to do things. So I've realized that I love accessibility, like just like ease of accessibility. So when I lived in Hong Kong, I loved that my gym was literally downstairs in my apartment because it made it so easy to do the things that sometimes that I would find hard to do, like go to the gym. Like I go to the gym like every day, but like, sometimes you wake up and you're like, oh, do I really feel like it? Do I have time? And if the gym was really far from me, it would be way easier for me to just say like, no, I don't have time, can't be bothered, not going. But I feel because I had such great accessibility for the gym to be downstairs, there was never an issue. Like I literally had no excuse. And so I would go very regularly. So I've noticed that I'm a person that, where I don't want to do things, or it can be hard, or whenever I'm setting up my like environment, I've realized that I need to make it as accessible and convenient for myself as possible. And I think the more like the average person gets busy and has a really crazy schedule, the more you need that, the more you need to focus on making things super accessible for yourself, that you don't have so many excuses to get whatever it is that you need to do done. For me, I think when I lived in Hong Kong, I loved the energy. It was super vibrant. There was so much happening. I loved the access to outdoor nature. I think it was just an environment that did help me really thrive and live into my independence. I do think the environment that I'm in now feels a little bit less like that. And so I found myself having to battle with being a bit more self-motivated, because the current like ease and accessibility of doing the things that I want to do isn't to the same level as it was in Hong Kong. And so you're not being like thrown things in your face and overstimulated so easily. So I think it's a good moment for me to step back and kind of realize that when I don't have all these distractions, what is it that I want to prioritize, and like how will I go about making things happen for myself? So I think that the last thing that I'll say on that I think contributes to it is controlling your mindset. I think 2 podcasts ago I spoke about, the last thing that I think it contributes towards this whole like topic is around controlling your mindset. So in a few podcasts ago, I talked about how the words that you speak become the house you live in. Love that quote. And I think it's really important. I think when I find myself in these, slumps or moods or mindsets, I really voice it to my close friends, my sister. Honestly, it's just my sister and like Alex, but yeah, so I'm just going to call them my close friends. And I voice it to them, and it allows me to kind of hear myself. And I think sometimes when you speak something into reality and you actually hear yourself saying, you can kind of very quickly get a wake-up call as to whether or not you're being like realistic, or whether what you're saying really makes sense. And you can also very quickly realize like how annoying you are. Like I find myself, if I'm saying something too much, I'm like, okay, like I've heard you say that so many times, I'm done with it. Like that's enough of that narrative and like that statement that you keep saying to yourself. Because I realize like, oh, if I keep saying that, then, I'm going to start believing it at some point, right? Even though it's a temporary feeling. So I think controlling your mindset and the words you speak is super important, because it 100% influences your overall mindset and the longevity of how long you like let thoughts sit, or let states of mind sit and stay around for. So yeah, my final words are Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, so my final takeaways are: one, Rome wasn't built in a day, so be patient with yourself and just ride that wave. Two, small steps. Three, simple decisions. And I think the last two kind of go hand in hand. It's like simple decisions, small steps. It's not like a simple decision to fix a big problem. It's simple decisions, small steps. You know, it might be, oh, hey, like on Monday, someone asked me to go to a run club. I was kind of like, it's at a time that I don't really like, but I'm going to be adaptable and make a simple decision to just go to this run. And what was the outcome? It was great. I met some new friends. I interacted with people. I got to know a new community. Simple decisions, small steps, and Rome wasn't built in a day. Okay, I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. I hope it helps in some shape or form when you're like next unsure or having doubts or feeling, just a bit icky. I like to look at these. I like to work through these sort of things that I've spoken about and just understand like why I'm going through what I'm going through. And I do think like speaking about it out loud does really help to put things into perspective. So I would try that if I was you. Bye.